What's good? This is JVB representing SPD, and that is SportsPerDiem.com. So the Chicago Bears must like sequels because they brought in another Matt and they brought in another Ryan to be the coach and the GM of the Chicago Bears. This last week, the Chicago Bears brought in the new general manager, Ryan Poles. 36 years old, he's a young guy for this role, but he comes from a great organization in the Kansas City Chiefs. He came from their front office, and he was one of the guys responsible for evaluating college talent. He himself, Ryan Poles, was a college player, was an NFL player. He played his college ball at Boston College, and he also had a cup of coffee with the Chicago Bears. So they hired Ryan Poles to be their new general manager, and a few days later, they hired Matt Eberflus to be the new head coach. Now, Matt Eberflus has been around for a long time in football. Most notably, the most recent job he had as the defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts. All 4 years that he was the defensive coordinator, the Indianapolis Colts ranked in the top 10 in takeaways. Now, that's a big deal because the Bears, they've had some good defenses. They had some all right defenses and they had some great defenses. But takeaways have always been an up and down thing for the Chicago Bears over the last few years, especially since Lovie Smith left way back when, over 10 years ago. So that part I'm really intrigued about with Matt Eberflus becoming the Bears head coach and having that defensive mindset. But a couple of things. Matt Eberflus is one of the 3 guys who was among the Bears finalists for the head coaching job. It was him, it was Dan Quinn, and it was Jim Caldwell. This is before Ryan Poles got the job as the general manager. Once Ryan Poles got the job as GM, but right after that, there was news that came out that Ryan Poles, he told George McCaskey and his sidekick Ted Phillips that, I appreciate you guys hiring me, but looking for a head coach, I want that to be my job. I don't want you guys' fingerprints on that. I want to have all my fingerprints all up over looking for a new head coach for this team. Now, I found it kind of funny because we heard that, but then Ryan Poles, he picked Matt Eberflus to be the head coach. One of the 3 finalists for the Bears job that George McCaskey and Ted Phillips picked out. Now, if that's true, if Ryan Poles told George McCaskey and Ted Phillips that, hey, I don't need you guys to be a part of the football operation, I got this. I love that. But on the flip side, if he told them that and they still said, oh, no, you work for us now. We're going to have our fingerprints all on this too. And he had to choose between Eberflus, Caldwell, and Quinn. I don't like that. It just felt a little weird to me because it happened so fast and he chose one of the finalists that they selected. Either way, the Bears got their new GM and they have their new head coach in Matt Eberflus. Now, my thoughts on both hires for Poles and Eberflus, I'm indifferent. I'm indifferent because I got to see what happens. I'm not going to get too high about these moves. I'm not going to get too low about them. I'm right in the middle with these moves with Eberflus and Ryan Poles. But for both of these guys, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of work to be done because you got Tweedledee and Tweedledum, George McCaskey and his sidekick Ted Phillips, who've made a big-ass mess. They brought in Matt Nagy and they brought in Ryan Pace, who continue to make the mess. So now it's up to Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus to get some things right. Now it's time for these guys to come in and establish themselves on this Bears organization. I'm talking about staff and coaching. I'm talking about player personnel. I'm talking about a culture, a scheme, all that. This team pretty much needs a whole damn makeover. I mentioned it before, but Matt Eberflus is a defensive guy. The Bears defense is flawed, don't get me wrong, but they do have more good players on the defensive side of the ball than they do on the offensive side of the ball. And not only that, the most important player that the Chicago Bears have is at the quarterback position. His name is Justin Fields. They need to bring in the right guy at the offensive coordinator position to mold this kid and make him the quarterback that we believe he could be. There's some talks that they've offered the job to the quarterback coach over in Green Bay. I don't know. If he's the right guy, if you feel like he's the right guy, hopefully he is. Because this team ain't going nowhere if Justin Fields isn't living up to his potential. If Justin Fields plays the way we believe he can be, if he is good, if he is that good, this team is going to go places. Justin Fields is the head of the snake for the Chicago Bears franchise. So whoever it is, if it's going to be the quarterback coach over in Green Bay, as the offensive coordinator, you need to do your damn job and you need to bring in other guys that's going to help you do that damn job. So a lot of pressure is on Matt Eberflus to get this right. Because if he doesn't, we're going to be in the same situation we've been in for years. And I get that the problem you may run into is if the guy from Green Bay is your guy, right, as the OC. You bring him in and he does a great job with Justin Fields. Justin Fields is playing up to his potential. He balling. What's going to eventually happen is that offensive coordinator is going to leave. He's going to get a head coaching job somewhere else. And then you have to start all over again. I know that's going to be tough. And we've seen it before with other defensive coaches. But for me, that's a risk I'm willing to take. If somebody could come in as the offensive mind, the offensive coordinator, and make Justin Fields the player that he believes he's going to be, I'm all in for that. I don't care what job those guys end up getting, because if they get that job, they fucking deserve it. They'll do something that no other offensive mind has done in Chicago ever. We'll actually have a quarterback who's worth a damn. And we've never seen that before, or we've never seen it in our lifetimes, at least, as Chicago Bears fans. So that's the biggest thing for Matt Eberflus, in my opinion, is to find the right offensive coordinator for this Bears team. Because at the end of the day, Justin Fields is the key to everything. And with that being said about Justin Fields, Ryan Poles as the new GM, he coming in with some bank. The Bears got a decent amount of money in the salary cap. His job is to, A, look for guys in the draft that can make a difference. On the offensive line, as a former offensive lineman, that's something I feel like he's pretty good at evaluating. Also at the playmaking positions, you have a nice combo at running back with Khalil Herbert and David Montgomery. And you also have a pretty good young wide receiver in Darnell Mooney. Cole Kmet's been decent. I feel like there's plenty more room for improvement for him. But you need to bring in some more offensive playmakers. You need to bring in some offensive linemen, and you need to bring in some playmakers in the draft, in free agency, have that perfect mixture to protect and help build Justin Fields also. Like I said, Justin Fields, he's the key to everything. He is going to be the reason this franchise is going to be great over the next 5 to 10 years, or this franchise is going to be looking for another quarterback in the next few years. Like I said, George McCaskey and his sidekick Ted Phillips, Twiddledee, Tweedledum, and Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, they made a big-ass mess. And now these guys, Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus, they got to do the job. They got to clean up and do all the extra dirty work. I have no sympathy on these guys because they signed up for it. This is what they wanted. So now that they're in this position, they got to do the damn thing, and they got to make it right, and they got to build around Justin Fields. But again, I'm not going to have a parade for neither hire. I'm not going to go out jumping and screaming and saying the Bears are going to be in the Super Bowl within the next 3 years. Of course, I would love that as a Chicago Bears fan, but I'm not going to go all crazy and saying anything like that. Nor am I going to say that the Bears are going to be one of the worst fucking teams in the NFL over those next few years. We just don't know. Like, people always want to come out and say, I like the hire or I hate the hire. You don't fucking know. None of us do. So at the end of the day, let's just sit back, chill, breathe, and see what these guys do. They have a lot of messes to clean up. Let's wait a year or two and see how things actually work out for this team. Hopefully, finally, there's good change to come. But I'm out. Like the video and share the video. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, take it easy. God bless. Peace.